All right, I'm in the gallery view. People are loading up.
Loading up.
We got Canada represented. Nice.
Hey,
Good
Lloyd
to see
Chucks.
Hi.
Deanna and Jackson. All right. Everybody's Julia Sutton. How you doing? Good to see you again. Awesome. Asaf, I talk to only on the weekends after hours. Lease assignments. Toggler, I hope you're selling a lot of pre-core equipment to the home division. All right. I think everybody's getting on here. When I started off, well, happy Friday, happy lunchtime. Bring your own. We've been busy at the Square, trying to help people from either an entrepreneurial therapy class and talk people off a ledge, or come up with best practices on what's happening around the world related to what the clubs are going to look like. And we've been updating everything on our integritysq.com/CV page. We also done some recent podcasts, so hopefully, if you need a dose of inspiration, there've been some good ones that we just launched, especially one with this guy Dan Millman on the 4 purposes of life and self-reflection, which caused me the other day to put up my my own official Jerry Maguire article on LinkedIn. If you haven't seen it, we hashtag Jerry Maguire, so I know I wrote it as if I was Jerry Maguire, so don't give me shit about it, because I know I was a little sappy. So what we wanted to do here, we got about 6 questions that came in over the last week, and then David, you could just let people in as they raise their hand here. So I'll just go through this, and Dave Fowler, my illustrious operational partner since the inception of the fitness industry back in the early, well, I'll just leave the decade out to give you the benefit of the doubt with your Just for Men goatee color. Nice. Beautiful. All right. The first question we had was Ken Leiniger asked about non-commit month-to-month dues going forward. And is that a business model that anyone's going to go back to? Obviously, we think the value of what you're providing going forward here should be viewed even higher than it was before. One of the other questions that came through that we're advocates of is raising your annual maintenance fee. It's typically $29 to $49 a year. We think that clubs should look to do that up to $99 and call it, be creative on what you think will resonate, but an annual maintenance and cleaning fee, and annual maintenance and sanitation fee. It could be something that includes the word member, member care fees. So think of something creative that might work for you, but I think you do have the ability to generate more on the annual maintenance fee 60 days after the anniversary. In addition to that, a lot of groups have called us up and said, I'm in this HVLP or HVLP 2.0, which is contingent upon being a high volume club, hence the high volume HV. And if I can't have high volume in my clubs, should I really give this away at the price that I had before? Because 19 or 29 works when you get 8,000 members. But if for some reason you can really only have the capacity for 4,000, should I go back to my middle market rates and not be afraid to go and charge new members 49 or 59 or 69 a month? One of our close friends here, we were joking around the other day about if a new member comes in, almost like when you go to a nightclub. I don't go anymore, but I used to. I'll admit it. Actually, a fair amount. I used to try and dispute my Amex card the next day that I didn't spend that money on, and it was not my bottle of Grey Goose. One of our clients says, what if we put up a velvet rope in front of the club and make it like a wait list? So people, when they come in, you say, look, I can't sell you membership. We're at capacity. And then you obviously call them up the next day and sell them a membership. But this guys or, belief that, hey, this is an exclusive club and I can't just go in and sign up for it. When I used to live in Arizona, the Gainey Village used to say that they only had an 1,800 member cap, and it was a great way to close me on a $150 membership 15 years ago. So some of these marketing tactics that are also in line with your capacity constraints could be some interesting things to do, and also play more of a revenue per member game than try and pack it in. And when I turn it over to my friend Fowler here and to give his commentary, because I'm sure he has an opinion on this.
Yeah, so I heard Ursa actually is involved because some states were saying that you can't hold people to a contract currently. So I think it's a big situation if you have 50% of your members coming back and there going to be no obligation for them to continue to fill out their agreement. Also, the agreement, is it in months, or is it, if you're closed for 3 months and you had 5 months left on your agreement, is it 5 months of billing, or is it 2 months of billing? So I think I think these are all this has not been like fully decided yet, and nobody that I know has mentioned that you cannot insert to make sure that your members are fulfilling the contract. So I think the play is probably an extended freeze. I do like the idea of looking at the annual fees now and the capacity. One thing that I'm seeing, some brands are doing reservation only through the app, 24-hour. We saw that there was Blink and Crunch was on a webinar yesterday with Ursa, and some are not. They're just clicking people in. I had a nightclub, by the way, in the city there, Pete. Maybe you were a participant, but we would the fire marshal would give us a hard time for all the right reasons if we had a big promotion. And so we had to click people in and click people out and then show them, that based on the occupancy. And that, I saw a video that's exactly what's happening with one of the locations. So considerations, me personally, I'm advising my clients to don't have the headache of taking reservations where you log on, you're coming in at 10:30 and you can see if there's a spot. If not, you come in at 11. Just the management of that is going to be difficult. However, if you've got an HVLP that used to drive significant traffic, say you have 6,000 members and 1,200 would show up a day, and now it might start off at 600. We're hearing 500, 400, 600, and that'll grow. And if your capacity is at 25%, you're going to reach it fairly quickly. So it's something I would be laser focused on upon opening, what that looks like, and your capacity, the entire gym, and then you've got your studio capacity and different parts of the gym capacity. So if you're allowed to have 200 people in your location and it used to be 800, I would really be thinking through that, where to put people. We're actually took some studios that we know we couldn't use at opening, and we actually put equipment in the studios, some strength equipment, so we could spread things out, which was a good use of space, putting all the bikes against the wall or putting all the functional area against the wall, and just trying to use the studios for other workouts, which will help the member feel comfortable, right? Because we're not selling memberships right now, we're selling confidence. And if somebody, we took some pictures showing this new layout, and it's going to be incorporated into our letters with the members. And I think it'll go a long way when they see that everything's been reconfigured for their safety.
Great. Thanks, Dave. So, one of the questions that I have not been able to get an answer to yet, and Fowler, maybe we can get this out and put it up on our site. But when the states come out and say, it's 1 per 100 square feet or 1 per 50 square feet or 25 or 50% of capacity, I was thinking the other day that might actually be a percentage of what the fire code occupancy is, which would technically be more relevant and maybe even more beneficial to us. So I think we should try and clarify that and maybe give people like a memo that they could, have that and say, look, this is what the rules say. And if I'm at, if I have a studio, Deanna and Jackson, like, I don't know how big your average studio is, but your fire capacity might be higher than your 1 per 100 square feet. So it might behoove you to take the tack that that's my capacity and I'm using it off of that versus like just my square footage and multiply by what it's not really fair. So I think we might have some subjectivity here and we might want to use that to our advantage by thinking through it, beforehand.
Our understanding is in Texas, they're going by fire capacity.
Okay, great.
That's correct.
All right.
That's correct for Texas. At 25%, I think, to launch, and I'm hearing it's going to go, the next phase will be 50%.
Got it. And a couple of the Gold's Gym guys that I spoke to over the last couple of days are putting up tents in their parking lots and in the back of their areas. Literally like a birthday, Sweet 16 tent, and nothing too expensive, but basically trying to expand that and getting a landlord to allow them to use some parking areas and cone it off. So that could be something, because everyone's saying, at least all the talking heads on every cable network, it sounds like the ability to get this virus when you're outside is very, very low. So think about that. And I think you got to ask for your landlord to do whatever you want them to do, even if it's a unconventional ask. Couple other questions we have here. My friend Asaf, hailing from Queens, Bronx, Upper West Side area, asked about, promoting and selling again and how to make sure people are not feeling negatively affected when they come into the club. I've seen videos that are inspirational videos of members wanting to come back to the club, and here's some shots of people wearing masks and gloves and check-ins and spacing of the equipment. And then I saw one by Mountainside Fitness, who's one of our clients, and they're good friends. They actually had somebody in like a Ghostbuster suit doing like a 30-second like spraying of the entire weight area, spraying of the kids area. As much as if I was like a clean freak, I was like, oh, that's awesome that they're going around with this guy in this like Ghostbuster, Ebola virus resistant, suit. But it also kind of scared the shit out of me that like, wow, like you really have to go to this level of precaution. It's like I want to know about it, but I don't necessarily need to see it. So you got to have to gauge for yourself. But if somebody was a little bit hypersensitive, in my mind, about going into the club, it might actually raise more fear than it does allay my concerns. So just think about that when you're marketing people. Say, hey, let's do this awesome video of like 4 guys walking around in these, spacesuits. Decide whether that's something you want to talk about or whether you want to actually film. So to each their own. The Romans, our friends down in South Jersey, holla out to the Romans. They asked about the PPP program and just some of the issues here related to how this is been set up to basically not provide any benefit to our industry. There's Ursa that we've been pinging and kind of hassling through Meredith to try and say, look, this PPP money can't be from 8 weeks from when you get it. It really should be 8 weeks from when you open. And that's the way that our business model works. And if you want to support the business model, that's the way to do it. So I don't think there's any loophole that I've seen that would give you forgiveness. I also don't think that, and I mentioned this in other podcasts and webinars, like you can't just pay employees not to work. Like it's anti-American, anti-Canadian, not a good business decision. Like you got to think always as a for-profit business, unless you're not a for-profit business. But that money's got to be preserved as much as possible, because we don't know. I'm working on a deal right now where we're forecasting out for an investor what a second and third shutdown look like. an investor came to us and said, hey, I'll do this deal, but in your lease agreements, I want in the force majeure section, if there's any other reason why I am not able to open my facility, I'm not coming back and negotiating with you. I'm like automatically not paying rent. And we're talking about it now, and we're not having this discussion again. And if you, the landlord, want to go buy pandemic insurance, that's on you. But if I can't enter the premises, you don't try and shake me down. Like that's not how it's going to go. I got a couple more, and then we can open it up here. Some of the anecdotal evidence that we have in Asia, there's a group called Fitness First Evolution Wellness. They supposedly, through a paragraph I read in the Planet Fitness transcript earnings report yesterday, they're basically 80% back to where they were before. Their new joins are actually higher than what they had anticipated coming out, but they're basically down 20% on total membership, but that's steadily coming back. And the last question, and I'll hand the baton over to Fowler. If somebody wants to buy someone else's membership list, why don't you start with some of the formulas that you've used, and I'll chime in.
Yeah, sounds good. A lot of times the person selling the list, they are thinking you're just going to give them cash for the list or something. And we've done this over probably 15 times. Gold, you come in, you build a new box. There's a couple of small players around. It's a little uncomfortable to have the conversation sometimes if you are the one who's starting the conversation to say, should you decide not to continue with your business or your lease is expiring. There's a home here. We'd love to have your members. We can work out something beneficial. If the person's contacting you, I would think we averaged around 4 months to 5 months of billing that we would split the dues. We started off usually sitting around 3 months, and sometimes we would go as much as 6 months for that member list. And again, it's net dues. So there might be a 30-day lag where somebody could get billed, and then they could, say that this wasn't something that they were interested in doing, transferring their membership, and there'd be a credit. A couple of things of interest there is based on the membership agreement, and this just happened at a location I was reading on yesterday, you can actually transfer all of your members over automatically if the agreement states so. And a lot of them do, that if there's a business within a certain amount of miles. And then they would cancel. So that membership list and that contract would have a higher value because you're going to have a little bit more stickiness with the member staying with you, or at least billing for 3 or 4 billing periods. And then lastly, I would say that looking at their amenities and their locker rooms and their square footage and their price point, and then look at your price point, all of this is factored in when you make the deal, whether it's 3 months of split billing or 6 months. Because if your product is superior and they've been successful, and you're going to bring people over, as an example, they're paying $20 a month at location A closing, and your location B, and you're charging $40 a month, and you're going to honor all those agreements, you're going to have more stickiness, you're going to have more billing. Now, once they're out of term, you could always increase the rates should you want to. It's also a good practice to find out how many paid in fulls they have. And then let's just say it's 15%, the average dues being 6 months. You tell the owner of the business that's closing or considering closing that you will take those off his hands. That's a liability that he will not have to repay. And you add up the dollars on that because there could be fairly significant. And you're just going to, as part of the deal. Now, if it's 50% of his member base is paid in fulls, there's a different scale of negotiation there, Pete. What have you done?
Yeah, so a couple of things. We've done probably about 5 of these member transfers. One with Jersey Strong, a couple with LA Fitness, and with Lifetime Fitness. We've typically done the 6 months, 50% of the total dollars that are collected. When the world was open and a club was closing, we gave the right to the group because we did an exclusive. The one I'm thinking of is with Lifetime Fitness in Indianapolis. We gave Lifetime the ability to come in for the 4 weeks prior to the closing of the club. Probably can't really do that now, but basically have their representatives inside of a club or even outside of a club when people show up and say, hey, this club's not reopening. They've given us the exclusive right to offer you membership at our club at the rate that you were paying. A couple of things to think about. In an ordinary course, if the world wasn't the way it is right now, I would say these membership contract transfers are pretty well done where you don't really have much risk. What's going on, I'm working on 2 bankruptcy deals right now. There's this term in bankruptcy court, or when a company is in a zone of insolvency, their assets are no longer the assets of the shareholders of the company. The assets are technically assets of the creditors. So before you go and do a deal with someone who says, hey, I'll sell you my membership list, let me send you an Excel file, you can send it out and start billing those people. Don't do anything without a lawyer, because that company and that owner needs to represent that they are not in an insolvent position, because then you're basically a party to a fraudulent conveyance of an asset outside of a defunct business. And you'll kick yourself by taking this on, because it's going to become more of a legal headache than you thought. So the best way to do that is basically say, hey, look, if you're not going to open, instead of me assuming your member agreements like I would do if the world was normalized, I will offer, and I'll come down or I'll do an email, and I will offer everyone the ability to sign my member agreement. And if you sign my member agreement, then I'm not a party to buying an asset or taking an asset that someone's going to come back and say, Jackson, like, you got 500 members out of this club and you got to pay me for what that was worth, versus, saying, oh, I did a 50% 6-month deal with this guy. It's like, well, we viewed that as a 2-year asset, not 50% of 6 months. And now you're like tied up in some lawsuit where you're just trying to help somebody out of a problem and make sure members had a place to sign up. So I say no good deed or no bad deed goes unpunished these days. So I would say protect yourself from that standpoint. And I would say, any kind of member welcome nights or member appreciation, or, pair members, some of your best members up with some members that are coming in new, go that route. But traditionally it's 6 months, 50% of what's collected. But right now I'd just be a little more careful. So I think that covered the main questions that we had preloaded here. If anybody wants to raise their hand or chime in here about something we can help you with, we're happy to take some questions, or feel free. We're going to do another one of these on the next Friday as well.
Anyone wants to chime in, you could unmute yourself now. Anyone's got anything?
All right. I think we're good. So Dave Ganelin, any other news that you want to report here?
Do we want to talk a little bit about the Halo Academy yet, Pete?
Oh yeah, sure. We're going to be sending out an email next week, probably over the weekend or Monday. I went to Harvard Business School, and we used to do Harvard Business School, 500 cases, every semester. So I went through, while we're in this down period, I looked on the Harvard Business School site, and there's a case on Peloton, there's a case on CrossFit, there's a case on SoulCycle, Cycle for Survival, which is a nonprofit, and Planet Fitness. So what we're going to do is do 5 2-hour case studies, kind of like in this format. I think I don't know what we're gonna charge just to cover our costs, like $500 a student or something, and they'll be Halo certified. So it's everything from, basically the equivalent of going into a business school class and, using your brain and thinking about, okay, if I'm at a crossroads and I'm, Planet Fitness and I'm thinking about buying this other Planet Fitness franchisee, what do I need to think about? If I'm the CEO of SoulCycle and I'm deciding whether I want to go digital, whether I want to do a partnership directly with Peloton, do I not want to do digital at all? So we're going to set up these case studies, and then we're going to have people, hopefully it becomes every month, because I love to do this, is just teaching and going through, like, here's like the business model, here's like the story behind the story, here's how you should think about this business. So we're going to set that up as our first kind of pilot Halo Academy. So it might be something for either anybody on this call when they're, want to feel like they're back in business school, or if you got, your general manager or your VP of ops and they're saying, hey, what can I do right now to help you guys, or what can I do to learn? We want to be that conduit, and it'll be fun and educational. And we're going to try and do like a 2-week intensive, and if people like it, then we'll do it monthly. So that's coming down the pike. We had a couple of really good podcasts that Dave is going to launch with some groups that have been going through moving from land to digital. We did one with our friends at Greco in Toronto. So they fired up their digital within like 3 weeks. The woman that runs that now is very much a perfectionist. So we kind of probed her on, like, how do you balance, making sure it's 100% right versus I need to get this out the door. So I thought that was a good one. And then the self-reflection that we did with Dan Millman. So, we're optimistic about things reopening. Not everybody's going to stay at home and, work on their Peloton or lift weights in their basement. So I'm not as nervous. I think there's going to be a lot of growth opportunities for groups that are well capitalized. And what I've been telling people, there's no rush to do anything right now. The commercial real estate market is going to be in dire need of groups like ours to come in and fill whatever space we want. And we haven't hit what the bottom base rents are going to look like. I can't even tell you what they're going to be yet. So I was on the phone with a couple of groups and they're like, hey, should I pounce on this? Should I pounce on that? I'd say, you don't really know how good of a deal you can get. So, Gold's Gym just filed for bankruptcy on Monday. There's going to be another big filing coming up next week. So, they say when there's blood on the street, buy property, but let's get a little more blood on the street first before, we move on it. So that would be my take on that front. So we're here to help. Hope you guys find this helpful to you. And, we want to make sure that we're a trampoline to make sure everyone bounces back properly. And I don't know, I just also remember that this is fun. So we're helping people get fit, and all the bullshit about obesity and diabetes and people getting coronavirus. Like, yeah, if you're in that physical condition, you're going to be vulnerable. Like, come into the gym, get these insurance companies start paying for you to come in, because when somebody goes on into intensive care, that's $100,000 per person. And I just want you to pay for your insurance for an individual to go in. I'm asking for $40 a month. Okay. So pay me $480 a year, or risk that you're going to have $100,000 medical bill. It doesn't make sense to me. So let's go and get the money. Let's get the people, and let's get back to work. So thanks. Have a great weekend. Appreciate y'all, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, guys. Later.